I'm Who Are We, and today we're diving into the visual search and the role of distractor inhibition. It's an introduction to the visual search. When performing a visual search, like looking for a set of key cards amidst cluster, we typically know what we are searching for, which aids in quickly identifying the target. However, there are instances where we know not what to look for, instead of what to look for. This brings up an important question. Can knowing what to ignore help us in visual search? Previous research suggests that being aware of what features to ignore, such as a specific color, can sometimes slow down the search instead of speeding it up. This counterintuitive phenomenon, known as the white bear effect, similar to the idea of trying to suppress a thought, makes it more prominent in our minds. The white bear effect in visual search. Mohair and Egith, 2012, demonstrated this effect in a study where participants were given valid information about the features they should ignore. Surprisingly, participants' reaction times, RTs, were slower when they had this information compared to when they had none. It appeared that participants would first focus on the distractor and then inhibit it, a process that slowed them down. Key research question. The research aims to explore whether learning to ignore a consistent distractor feature, such as a specific color, can eventually improve visual search performance. Specifically, can people develop a template for rejection to preeminently ignore certain features and thus speed up their search? The experiment's overview. So, Experiment 1. Participants. 25 students were tasked with searching for a target letter while being cued to ignore a specific color on some trials. Design. There were two trial types. There were ignore trials. Participants were told to ignore a specific color. There were neutral trials. Participants were given no information about what to ignore. Results. Early in the experiment, participants were slower in the ignore trials than in the neutral trials, indicating a cost to inhibiting distractors initially. However, with practice, participants became faster in ignore trials than in neutral trials, demonstrating that they had learned to efficiently ignore the distractor. Key findings. The benefit of learning to ignore. The results suggest that while inhibiting distractors can initially be challenging, with practice, participants can learn to ignore specific features effectively. By the end of the experiment, participants were able to search more efficiently when they knew what to ignore. The second experiment. To test whether this learning effect was robust, a second experiment was conducted with a more complex setup. Ignore condition. Participants had to ignore multiple distractor items of a consistent color across trials. Results. Again, participants showed improved reaction times after they had learned to consistently ignore a specific distractor feature. The effect was even stronger when there was more items to ignore. Conclusions. Distractor inhibition and visual search. Early cost, later benefits. Initially, knowing what to ignore can slow down visual search, but over time, with consistent practice, people can learn to ignore distractors efficiently. This leads to faster searches, such as participants develop a mental template for rejection. Learning to ignore. The ability to ignore irrelevant information or distractor inhibition is not innate but can be learned through practice, especially when the to be ignored feature remains constant. Implications and future directions. Understanding how distractor inhibition works is crucial for improving tasks where visual search is essential, such as airport security screenings or medical imaging. Future research may focus on the mechanisms behind this learning process and explore how it could be enhanced or accelerated. The key takeaway for the students. Number 1. Visual search is a dynamic process. Knowing what to ignore can be as important as knowing what to search for. 2. Initial inhibition of distractors slows us down, but practice can keep speeding up this process over time. 3. A consistent feature to ignore allows the brain to develop a template for rejection, improving overall search efficiency. This concludes our lecture on how learning to ignore distractors impacts visual search. Thank you.